Just 5 years ago, the Philadelphia Eagles slumped to a 4-11-1 season, finishing bottom of a dire NFC East and suffering the team's joint worst win total since 1998. With major question marks at head coach, quarterback, and across the roster, the franchise's future had never looked more uncertain. Fast forward to 2024, and the Eagles have soared back to the top of the football world, delivering a Super Bowl 59 beatdown of the Kansas City Chiefs in one of the most dominant championship performances ever. But how did they rebuild so quickly and so effectively? Let's dive into the Eagles' rapid rise back to glory. To begin, we'll look at the 2020 Eagles, which was the absolute low point for this franchise in recent years. Just 3 years removed from the first Super Bowl title in team history, this Eagles team looked like a shell of the one that had taken down Tom Brady's Patriots 41-33 in Super Bowl 52. At this point, there was very little for the Eagles to be positive about, with the Birds boasting the league's 26th ranked offense and 20th ranked defense, and ending the season far away from playoff contention. This season would ultimately cost Doug Peterson his head coaching job, with the Lombardi Trophy that the team earned in 2018 not enough to convince team owner Jeffrey Lurie to keep him on. Another man who would see his time in the city of brotherly love come to an end was former second overall pick Carson Wentz. Wentz had once been considered the next franchise QB and a real source of hope in Philly, particularly during the 2017 season, where he was playing at a near MVP level before his season was cut short by injury. But in the years that followed, Wentz would steadily decline, culminating in a dismal 2020 season where he threw 15 picks and just 16 touchdowns, leading to a passer rating of 72.8, ranking him just above Sam Darnold as the second worst mark in the league. Luckily, in that 2020 draft, the Eagles were clearly already looking at a future without Wentz, as they picked up their eventual franchise QB with the 53rd overall pick. Enter Jalen Hurts. Hurts had encountered various setbacks during his college career, most notably being benched in the 2018 National Championship game between Alabama and Georgia. But after a transfer to Oklahoma in 2019, he impressed Eagles scouts enough through the air and on the ground to use a second rounder on him. And after Wentz was traded to Indianapolis for a first and third round pick, Hurts would be the starter for 2021. He would do so under a new head coach in Nick Sirianni, previously the offensive coordinator for the Colts. Sirianni was a relatively young hire, turning 40 just before his first season as a head coach. That year, he would be flanked by two even younger coordinators in offensive coordinator Shane Steichen and defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, as the Eagles looked for a totally new direction after Peterson's departure. The draft would also see a key addition at receiver, with the Eagles taking Devontae Smith 10th overall. This was an obvious position of need, as Travis Fulgham had led the team in receiving yards the previous year with just 539. Smith was a Heisman winner out of Alabama and was a much-needed new target for a young quarterback going into his first year as a starter. The 2021 season started poorly in Philly, with the team going 2-5 through their first 7 games, but they rebounded to win 7 of their last 10 and would squeeze into the final NFC wildcard spot over the Saints. In the wildcard round, they were totally outmatched against Tom Brady's Bucs, showing that there was clearly plenty of work to do to reach the league's elite. But the team was trending in the right direction, and Philly had led the league's best rushing offense, courtesy of Hurts, Miles Sanders, and an elite offensive line led by All-Pros Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson, as well as second-round pick Landon Dickerson. In 2022, the Eagles landed the necessary firepower to put them over the top. In a trade that Titans fans are still cursing, GM Howie Roseman convinced Tennessee to give up superstar wide receiver A.J. Brown for a first and third round pick, adding even more firepower to this offense. In free agency, the team made big moves on defense, picking up Hassan Reddick and James Bradbury, both of whom would be named All-Pro that season. With these additions on both sides of the ball, the 2022 Eagles were a true juggernaut, going 14-3 and dismantling both the Giants and 49ers en route to a heartbreaking 38-35 Super Bowl 57 loss to Kansas City and Arizona. The Eagles were now one of the league's elite outfits, but that success would come at a price. Both coordinators, Steichen and Gannon, were poached for head coaching jobs at the Colts and Cardinals respectively after their impressive performances in 2022. After all, the Eagles were in the top 3 in yardage on both offense and defense that year, looking like an unstoppable force all over the field. This drain of brainpower led to some serious regression in 2023, particularly on the defensive side. After starting 10-1, the Eagles absolutely collapsed down the stretch, losing 6 out of their last 7, including a dismal 32-9 wildcard round defeat at the hands of a distinctly average Tampa Bay team. That Eagles D, which had been so dominant the year before, dropped to the league's 3rd worst scoring defense, which cost defensive coordinator Sean Desai his job. Offensive coordinator Brian Johnson was also fired at the end of the year, and Sirianni himself was considered to really be on the hot seat following such a shambolic final 2 months. This team was clearly not lacking in talent, but there were plenty of question marks going into the 2024 NFL season. For starters, the team had to deal with the retirement of their 2 longest tenured players in center Jason Kelce and defensive tackle Fletcher Cox, who had a combined 25 seasons and 10 All-Pro selections between them. Kelce and Cox had been a huge part of over a decade of Eagles football, and they would be hard to replace as 2 men who exemplified leadership on and off the football field. Furthermore, the Eagles needed 2 new coordinators for 2024 as they set about another rebuild of sorts. On offense, they went for Kellen Moore, who had suffered a rough time as the Chargers offensive coordinator in 2023, but had real success during his time at the Cowboys, having recorded the league's best yardage offense twice in 4 years there. Whilst Moore was on the younger side as an offensive coordinator, on defense they went for a man who has been coaching in the NFL since 1986, the year that Moore was born. Vic Fangio has been a defensive coordinator in the league for 6 different franchises prior to his arrival in Philadelphia and has more experience than almost anyone else in the league. Despite a disappointing time as the Broncos head coach, Fangio retains a great reputation as a defensive mind, and most figured this would be a significant upgrade over the departing Desai. But in addition to a new coordinator, the team would clearly need to plug some holes on the personnel side during free agency and the draft as well. In free agency, the team made a few smart acquisitions on the defensive side of the ball, including safety CJ Gardner-Johnson. Gardner-Johnson was on the Eagles team that made the Super Bowl in 2022 and co-led the league in interceptions that year. But at the end of that season, the team let him slip to Detroit in free agency. A year later, with the team having the league's second worst passing defense, Howie Roseman convinced him to return on a 3-year, $27 million deal to try and bolster that secondary. Another free agent signing that would prove to be a tremendous pickup was ex-Saints linebacker Zach Bond. Bond was a casualty of the Saints' constant cap nightmare, and as a result, they were unable to offer him a new deal in the Big Easy, allowing him to hit the open market. Philly saw the potential in Bond where several other teams didn't, and offered him a 1-year deal worth just $3.5 million. Which was probably the best value free agent signing in the league last year. Bond became first-team All-Pro, leading the team in tackles with 152 and forcing 5 fumbles along the way, instantly becoming a core part of this defense. In the draft, the Eagles used both of their first 2 picks on cornerbacks, selecting Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo and Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. Again, this was Howie Roseman identifying an area of weakness, the secondary, and going all out to fix it. And they were both instant success stories, with both men being named to the all-rookie team as the Eagles' pass defense rocketed from the second worst in pro football to the very best in 2024. These epic selections continued a trend of draft day successes by Howie Roseman on the defensive side of the ball in recent years, joining the likes of Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, and Jordan Davis as first-rounders, as well as players like Nakobe Dean and Milton Williams as stud third-rounders. That is how you build a juggernaut. But of course, the biggest addition of all in the 2024 offseason was at running back. After 6 seasons stuck on often terrible New York Giants rosters, Saquon Barkley was allowed to leave in free agency after failing to agree on a new deal. Giants GM Joe Schoen said in the Hard Knocks series that the Giants would be fine losing Saquon, and he honestly couldn't have been more wrong about that. In 2024, Saquon Barkley had arguably the best season that any running back has ever had in the history of professional football. Including playoffs, Barkley rushed for 2,504 yards, breaking a record previously set by Broncos Hall of Famer Terrell Davis in 1998. As a result, he was named first-team All-Pro, was awarded Offensive Player of the Year, and even finished third in MVP voting, a tremendous achievement for a running back in the modern NFL. Barkley was by far the most notable addition at a skill position, with the other crucial business being wrapped up in April. The extensions to both Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, the undisputed best receiving duo in football. And we have to talk about this offensive line as well. Despite losing Jason Kelce, this unit has not skipped a beat with Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, and Mekhi Becton forming the league's best unit. So much of this team's success is made easier by the blocking up front, allowing Barkley time to run and Hurts time to throw. After a rocky 2-2 start, this Eagles team was near unstoppable from the start of October until Super Bowl 59. In the final 13 games of the season, the Eagles went 12-1, with the sole loss coming in a thrilling NFC East clash with the Commanders, where Jaden Daniels threw the game-winning touchdown with just 6 seconds left. Hurts went down injured in that one, with Kenny Pickett playing most of the game. And if Hurts had been fully healthy, it's easy to imagine the Eagles winning that one as well. The beauty of this Eagles team is their ability to beat you in so many different ways. They have the league's second best rushing offense, only behind Baltimore, with Barkley's brilliance also complemented by Hurts' ability to make plays on the ground when needed, especially with the near unstoppable tush push. They have a fantastic defense that has caused 26 turnovers this year, giving them a differential of +11. This was best shown in the 55-23 NFC Championship demolition of Washington, where they forced 4 turnovers, extinguishing the hopes of the league's new feel-good story in 60 brutal minutes of football at Lincoln Financial Field. All of this takes us to the Super Bowl, where the Eagles entered as 1-point underdogs against an epic NFL dynasty in the Kansas City Chiefs. Most expected a close encounter here, which made what followed stunning to the 123 million Americans watching on Fox. Quite simply, the Eagles broke the Chiefs. KC managed just 1 first down in the first half, as Patrick Mahomes had the worst game of his career. The Eagles' defense was magnificent throughout, with special props to Josh Sweat and his 2.5 sacks, Zach Bond and his interception and 7 tackles, and of course, Cooper DeJean with his game-breaking pick 6, which made the score 17-0 in the second quarter. And in the biggest game of his career, Jalen Hurts was superb, shutting up any doubters he might have had. Despite 1 poor interception early on, Hurts was the deserving MVP that night, with just 5 incompletions, 2 touchdowns, 221 passing yards, and a passer rating of 119.7. Hurts also added another 72 yards on the ground, which broke his own record for rushing yards by a quarterback in a Super Bowl, which he set back in Super Bowl 57. Strangely, this was Saquon's quietest game of the year, with just 57 rushing yards, but it just didn't matter. Stopping Saquon alone isn't enough to deal with this multi-headed monster Eagles team that's been so well assembled by Howie Roseman in the past few years. As Nick Sirianni lifted the Lombardi Trophy in just his 4th season as a head coach, the other 31 fan bases could only look on with envy as the Eagles climbed back to the mountaintop, just 4 years out from a 4-win season. And the way they looked on Sunday, you'd back them to stay at the top of the pile for a while to come. But do you think this could be the next NFL dynasty? Let us know in the comments.